Hello, lovely you. My name is Emma. I hope you are well. I'm one of the counsellors here, and particularly over the last 2 or 3 weeks, as you would imagine, we've all been helping people with a lot of concerns over current events that are going on. The coronavirus is affecting everybody. It is touching all parts of our lives, sometimes in very different ways depending on our circumstances and lives before this thing happened. But one thing is true, one thing that I found very common the last couple of weeks is that it's leaving nobody out. We've all got concerns going on. We're all feeling something. We are all affected. So I wanted to check in with you today and talk about some of the things that I'm aware of that are coming forward for people and a couple of strategies that might be able to help at this time. Okay, so let's talk about the P word, and I don't mean pandemic, I mean panic. This is a big thing for people right now because there is something going on. We've got access to news, to other people's opinions, and it's human nature to want to know and to need to know what is going on. I've got a couple of top tips for this. Number one, always go to a reputable source for your news. I found a couple of weeks ago that I was glued to my phone, looking at any information, almost hungry for information, starving for reassurance about this situation. What that did was it exposed me to a little bit of fake news. It exposed me to people who were trying to help, trying to give shares on things like Facebook to let you know about what the latest advice is. But that actually made me feel more stressed. And what I realised is that, Betty, 5 doors up, who is great at looking after my guinea pig, probably isn't great at looking at the latest statistics out of Wuhan. She likes to pass on information to share to the people she cares about, but sometimes it's not great to put a lot of faith in Betty up the street. So I was then going to the news channels that I particularly like, that I feel are reputable, and I was checking in with them once on a morning and once on an evening. I also found looking on my phone at the news website, going directly to them, limited the amount of time I could choose to read the stories that I wanted to, and I didn't have to sit through the whole news broadcast on the TV. So top tip number one, maybe spend a little bit of time less time looking for your news on social media and go straight to source. Limit it to a couple of check-ins a day. That has really, really helped me. Also, be super kind to yourself. Bring in a whole bunch of self-compassion now, because when things are uncertain, we are hungry for information because we want to read that story about the miracle cure. We want to read that story about cases dropping. That is human nature. We will be looking for that continually, but we have to really balance our approach to that. What else was I going to say about that? So yeah, be very careful about where you hang out and where you spend your time. That really is the top best tip I've got to do with that. Protect your space. It's about being boundaried. It's about not putting yourself through more than you really need to. The other thing is, you can validate how you feel by knowing that appropriate concern is the way to be right now. Nobody's telling you, don't overthink it, don't do this, don't watch the news. That is a bit like when you are feeling anxious, that's a bit like holding a giant beach ball under the water. Press it down, don't think about it, poof, it comes up, and the next thing you know, you've got a broken nose and a bleeder. So an emotional broken nose. So the best thing to do, rather than try and suppress fear, anxiety, things like that, soften it, soften the edges. You are entitled to have, and it is only healthy to have, appropriate concern right now. Things like appropriate concern or checking in with the news a couple of times a day from a reputable source. Appropriate concern isn't scrolling Facebook all day, really getting yourself in the zone and that state of not feeling good. That is when we're moving towards anxiety. We're running towards anxiety. Put the brakes on, keep appropriate concern. Be careful with where you spend your time. The other top tip I've got is about allowing and about getting real. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say to you, my emotions are completely, you know, in check. I've been doing my work. I've been reading my books. I'm a counsellor. I know what to do with all this. I don't, because this is a new situation. We are trying to get our heads around an abnormal situation. Nobody's done it exactly like this before, so nobody exactly knows what the best thing to do is. You are your own best expert though. So in uncertain times, what you can be certain about is your ability to thrive. You can be certain about the big challenges that you've got through in your life already. And you know that you have the capacity to dig deep, find your inner resources, probably find a couple of external resources as well. So you can be certain that you have got the ability to get through this. That's one thing you can be certain about. The other thing you can get certain about is strategies that work for you. If you've worked with me before, you know I'm really into tools and tips to get traction. So things like some mindful breathing, things like consciously checking in with yourself and thinking, I know I'm holding myself like this. I just need to chill out a little bit. Really become aware of how you're feeling. On how you are feeling, this is key. This is the really big key in allowing, is to expect your feelings to change from moment to moment. I've spoken to so many people last week about, they've said it's like being hit by a wave. But what happens is, with shock, with anxiety, with fear, with unsettled feeling, with that horrible icky, I don't know what's going to happen uncertainty, yes, it comes in a wave, but it also goes out again. And there's really got to be that understanding and that knowing that these waves will happen. If you get out of bed and you set yourself up for a super positive, super brilliant, super focused day, and any other super you can think of, if you set your expectations of yourself and your emotions too high, all you're doing is preparing yourself for a fall. And I can tell you that at least, 3 or 4 times a day, I feel a wave. What I do when I sit with that wave, I feel the wave, I sit with it. I maybe give myself a bit of reassurance by pressing down here, take a breath, and I think, oh yeah, that did make me feel like that. Okay, let's just see. All right, I can feel that wave going out now. Maybe you want to take some breaths. Maybe you need to get up and move around and literally shake that anxious, wound up energy off. You can develop any strategy that is going to work well for you. If you feel panic rising, you've got to stop it. You've got to get an idea in your head that is going to stop you from spiraling. And a distraction technique can be really, really great right now. Something as simple as jumping up, going and making a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in the kitchen and doing 10-star jumps. That is enough to interrupt the automatic thought in your head and the spiral that is making you feel worse and worse. Take responsibility if you can. You know you can do this and you know you can get yourself through it, but you've got to think smart and you've got to think fast before that spiral begins to feel a little bit too deep. So expect change. Expect and be really kind with yourself about that natural flux in emotions. Think of it like waves. You will be getting hit with waves of emotion, but eventually the tide goes out and we get a little break before the next tide and the next set of waves come in. That is exactly normal for how life should feel emotionally at the moment, or could feel at the moment. And I think that's the thing. When we are maybe in the process of getting therapy and we're familiar with talking about emotions, we want to see that positive projection all of the time because things are getting better, I'm feeling better, and then something like this happens and we feel that slide and that slump. But we've got to expect things to feel okay sometimes and not okay the other times. But it doesn't mean that we're sliding right the way back down there. It's just a normal reaction to an abnormal situation that is going on at the moment. The last thing I want to leave you with, which is a really, really great tip that I use all the time, is to look for a little pocket rather than set yourself up for something big. So say, for example, I'm doing bits of work. Rather than aim for a whole day of work, I might aim for an hour. I might aim for a pocket of work. Rather than aiming for a whole morning stress-free, I might check in with an online meditation and just get my Zen on for 5 minutes. Rather than aiming to laugh my socks off all night, I watch a funny YouTube clip and I give myself that mental break just for 5 minutes. The reason these pockets of activity are useful is that they give us a self-esteem boost. They make us feel like a winner. When we set ourselves up for too big a challenge, we very easily feel that fall, that failure, that I didn't do it. Then the self-talk comes in, and that's a whole nother video. But set yourself up for an easy win. Make it small, make it achievable, and praise yourself all the way and make it fun. You know, do something that is really going to make you laugh. I realised one day last week that I literally hadn't laughed all day. It felt like such a serious, heavy day. Whilst there is that level of appropriate concern for the seriousness and heaviness, we can't live like that all the time or it'll pull us under. So we really need to build in these little pockets of peace, pockets of happy. One final note is that I'm very much a routines person. I want to pass that question to you. You know, life has changed for a lot of us. Our daily structure is different. How are you managing? Have you got a routine or are you enjoying the free flow? Now for me, I can't cope without a bit of a routine and a structure. So I'm doing online fitness classes. I've got my 30-day yoga challenge that I found on YouTube. Get creative. That's what I'm saying. If you need structure and you feel like you're beginning to flounder, being cooped up, quarantined, self-isolated, whatever word you want to use, routine could be your saviour. Get up at a set time, get dressed, get washed, get your plan written down. Do it on a list form so you're not trying to keep everything up here, and engage with structure. And that should really help you have a purpose, something to do, something to connect with, which is a huge aspect of resilience, which is what we need to be boosting right now. I hope you've taken some tips from this and a few ideas just to help you at this time. And thanks for watching. Take care for now. Bye.